What's going on, guys? It's Coach Gaglione here, GaglioneStrength.com, and this is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. We have another very strong lady on the line. Lizzy, how you doing today?
Hey guys, I'm good.
Good. So thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. I know we've bumped into each other a couple of times when I'm on the West Coast, and that just saw each other again at Raw Nationals, which is really cool. For people that don't maybe know who you are, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you got going on right now.
My real name's Lizzy. You might see me on Instagram as Freza Forte. I just got back from Raw Nationals. Was that like 6 weeks ago? Right?
Yeah, something like that. At a time, I know my sense of time is all like crazy too. I don't even know what's
I
going on,
feel
but
like
it's
it
been
was yesterday, but then like, wait, it's been like 6 weeks.
yeah, it's been a little over a month. I know it's crazy. It seems like yesterday.
I've been powerlifting for like 2 years and like kind of generally lifting weights for about 4, 5. And I'm a personal trainer. I live in Los Angeles, and I guess that's really it.
Cool. LA personal trainer. Very cool. Awesome stuff. So definitely talk about that a little bit more later. So I want to kind of rewind a little bit. I'd love to hear about kind of how you got started training. Didn't necessarily be powerlifting, but how did you like get into just like fitness and training, and what kind of sparked that, and what was it kind of like going into like the gym like for the first time?
So I was pretty active when I was a kid. I played a lot of sports, but just like soccer and softball, like kind of what everyone does.
Cool.
I was really into it when I was younger, and then I went through a phase where I had like stopped doing everything. Like I just went through like I hate sports. I'm gonna stop. So I was like fairly inactive for like high school, pretty much. Then I went to college and I started playing ultimate frisbee, like very competitively, which I know is like sounds a little weird. It's a little crazy. But I remember all the girls, like every girl who plays is like 6 feet tall, and I'm like five, not an inch over 5 feet. So I was like, man, if I'm gonna like beat these girls, I'm gonna be able to run really fast and jump really, really high. So I started going to the gym. At first, like I didn't know what I was doing, so I just did like weighted lunges and pull-ups, and that's all I would do, and like abs for like 2 hours. I remember my first experience in like the real weight room. You know how there's always like where the real weights are,
It's
and then
kind
like
of
just at like a college gym or a Globo gym. I remember a guy telling me that the girl weights were in the other room, and
Wow.
I was doing lunges with like 40-pound dumbbells.
It's
Like
yeah,
it was legit.
yeah, it's some weight on there.
Yeah, and I remember that. And then one of my friends who was like, I remember when CrossFit just started, he encouraged me to like lift with them. We had built a squat rack out of like wood. It ended up breaking eventually. But we would just work out outside. We'd go to the park. We'd bring rings. Like do the workout of the day. Remember when there was like the website? I'm sure it's still there.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's still there. Yeah, I'm sure there's someone still following those wads. You know, someone out
It
there.
was really fun back then though, because we would just like go to the park and do it. We even made concrete plates, like Flintstone plates, and did deadlifts.
It's cool.
I think it was only 150 pounds, but that's how like I first got introduced. We would like push cars, stuff like that. And then the same dude was like, oh, there's this like just like black iron gym in Brooklyn. You should go when you go back to school. And that's how I just started lifting weights, and like I got stronger really fast. I mean, I just started squatting like 5x5 at 60 pounds. Like my bench was 45 pounds, and
Super
it
light.
was really fun. I just kept going. Yeah.
Cool. And then was that like around like was that like in college, or like how old were you
Yeah,
like
it
at the
was
time?
like at second year of college or first year. So I was probably about 19 or 20.
Yeah, so there was like a little gap there. So it seemed like you were like into athletics and you kind of stopped. Was there like any like reason why you just kind of felt burnt out, or like was there any kind of reason you stopped? And what kind of made you kind of take the jump to like get active again and get doing more training and stuff like that?
Well, I stopped because like I went through like a goth phase in high school, so I decided I didn't like any of the girls who played soccer. Also, when you're like, our school wasn't super into sports, so that meant the girls' teams were even like less supported. So our coaches didn't know what they were doing. Like our
Yeah.
soccer coach didn't know how to play soccer. it just wasn't like a supportive environment. So I just quit. And then in college, I don't know, I just started getting in the fitness again, and I thought it was like really fun.
Yes. So would you say it's more just like the environment? Because I always talk about like you want to kind of surround yourself with positive, like-minded people and things like that.
Well,
So I
that's the
think,
thing. I went to school and
yeah,
like I didn't like any of the kids. I'm a nice person. I like people. I
yeah,
swear.
no, sure, yeah. We always,
So like the kids were partying all the time, and like I wasn't really into it. So when I got back on a team of like playing sports again, I made friends. It was fun. I just like that's all I wanted to do. So
cool.
yeah,
I also really enjoyed like that you got really resourceful, and it wasn't like really this perfect gym or like this perfect situation. You kind of just kind of like, oh well, we'll use these rocks, or we'll use this like playground. I know like I was actually just in California at Reebok Record Breakers, and they have, California is just like a different animal from depending on where you live, but at the new CSA gym, they had this whole like outside rig, and I just think it's also cool to like do some like physical fitness stuff like outside. I know that's
yeah,
something that I enjoy. I've been kind of doing more conditioning stuff myself. Kind of not exactly the same kind of goals as you, but I'm just trying to focus a little bit more on like health and aesthetics and things like that, and kind of strengths kind of a little bit more on the back burner. So I think it's kind of just nice to switch things up and just kind of do things outside and maybe not worry about having the perfect equipment all the time or the perfect, like you said, we had this wood squat rack, so I thought that was like pretty cool. So awesome. Um, so obviously, the last I guess the I'm trying to think the yeah. So I guess the first time I met you was Raw Nationals the year prior, I think, and then I saw you again this year. So obviously, in this time that you started powerlifting, you've gotten more competitive. You're starting to do like really well, like as far as in your like weight class. You're doing, you're well past that 60-pound squat and 40-pound bench now.
yes.
So can you tell us a little about like the progression and how you started to kind of climb up the ranks. Obviously, taking it a little bit more serious. Obviously, still having fun, but you're
Yeah.
obviously it's a little bit bigger part of your life now, and you're pushing the limits a little bit, and you're trying to be a little bit more competitive. So, tell us a little bit about that and like what that kind of prompts you to do your first powerlifting meet.
So when I first started, I did like starting strength for a little bit. I think that's how a lot of people get into it. And then I actually did weightlifting for a few years, which was fun. I did some weightlifting competitions first, actually.
Cool.
I think I did 4. And then that was still in New York. So then I moved to California and I couldn't find a place to do weightlifting. So I started going to Barbell Brigade. I made powerlifter friends and
Cool.
they were all doing a meet. So I was like, oh, I'll just do it. Like, I'll be really strong. It will be great. I can lift these numbers. And then I went to the meet and I did so poorly. It was so different. It was like that kind of everyone's first meet, if they've already lifted weights, like they think they're going to do so well. I failed like a 190-pound squat, I think. I failed a 250-pound deadlift. Like numbers I could rep out for 5. I just failed.
And what did you would you attribute that just like maybe taking it too lightly or just not being prepared, not knowing the rules as well as maybe you should have, or
Yeah, so
like
I didn't have a coach at all. I tried at that point too. I also decided that I wanted to be super aesthetic, and I cut a ton of weight all year.
sure.
Before I had like the musculature to do that, so I was competing at 105 pounds at that time, which is about 25 pounds less than I am now.
Yeah, so you're 57 kg
I'm,
now, or
yeah, I'm a 57, and I'm like really light for the
yeah, you
class.
don't,
You
yeah,
get the
yep. We've talked about that, and then, yeah,
yeah.
I know, like, but yeah, so obviously going from 105 is a big difference for
Yeah,
sure.
that was a big difference. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I would just go to the gym and like max out every day, stuff like that.
So not really having a plan, just kind of doing whatever, and then just kind of maybe, yeah, and then, yeah. I always tell people like, it's always easier to look back, but when people want to cut weight for the first meet, it always drives me kind of crazy because they think, oh yeah, I've been lifting for a while, I got this down, and I'll be more competitive or whatever. But there's so many other factors that you don't kind of consider, and so I think it's good to like kind of hear that you're just not now trying to maybe fill out your weight class. You kind of want to get a little more comfortable, gain some experience, keep getting stronger, and not really worry about like maybe being the optimal weight or kind of filling out the weight class and just kind of doing a little bit slower progression. So, so that was your first meet. Obviously, you've had a lot more success since then. So, what was kind of maybe some of the things that kind of helped you get from that first meet to like, competing on like a national stage and like doing like well like for your for your weight class and division?
Well, I did another meet after that, and then I qualified for USAPL Nationals for the first time. I had kind of let my weight get a little higher, so I did that as a 52, and I had got a coach. I had asked Chad to coach me for that, but I asked him like for the 4 weeks before, which
Nice.
of course doesn't really help. And then after then, so I didn't do that. Was my first nationals actually 3 years ago, and I didn't do very well. I only hit my openers. And then I had decided, I was like, I'm just not going to care about my weight.
Yeah.
I'm going to work with a coach for a solid year. And I had added 100 kilos to my total between that year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, even more, I think. And that was from just, I didn't care about my weight. And I just like let my body do what it wanted. And I worked really hard and I got a lot stronger really fast. So yeah, don't like try to stay in a weight class when you're just starting, because it will just hurt you in the end, I feel like.
Cool. I think a lot of kind of like women like struggle with that, especially just whether it's like just seeing a higher number on the scale, even if their bodies may look like great, but just kind of seeing that number kind of climb up can kind of freak people out if they've never seen that number before. Do you have any advice for like, maybe like because I'm sure maybe going from like 105 to 125, it's it's obviously it's a big difference, but do you have any advice for like women that maybe struggle with like the scale number or just kind of like just maybe body image issues or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't. So like, I had trouble with it even when I first started lifting, because like, I don't know. You see everyone, they have abs. You want abs. I remember growing up, all I wanted to do was be a size 0, which even at 100 pounds, I was a size 0. I was teeny, and I like didn't look good. I think I look better now.
Sure.
Yeah, and I don't know what I think. Watching the numbers, like being able to have at the time 225 was like a really heavy spot for me, and just being able to take my 1 rep max and make that into like a 10 rep max within like I guess 8 months. It was a year was like when you start focusing on other things, it's easier to kind of let that go, I think. And then just knowing that everything, like you're in control of everything. So if you let your weight go up a little bit, and if you don't like it in the long run, you can always change it. Nothing's permanent. You end up going up and down, and it's okay. So I think that's when I felt like I was in control, it didn't bother me as much to gain weight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think your focus kind of probably shifted toward performance a little bit, and maybe not as much on like the scale number like anymore, which I think is good. And I think that's one of the great things about powerlifting is it maybe gets your focus a little bit off kind of your scale and the body a little bit, and then a lot of times your aesthetics and stuff will change, and they will improve as a result of just like that hard training. So just kind of shifts your focus, which I think is great.
Yeah.
So along your journey, I'm sure you've had some ups and downs. It wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. You probably had some setbacks, maybe some injuries. If so, like what were those things, and like how did you kind of overcome them and get back on track?
I think actually the past like 5 months have been the hardest for me. Like right now, I'm going through a little down period. I kind of stopped caring about what I was eating too much. So I started like only eating junk food, not eating enough food at the same time. And I just started feeling weaker. So after feeling super strong and feeling like I was finally getting there, then like for no reason, it just took like a huge step back. And it was like kind of startling and like kind of made training not fun. I didn't want to go to the last nationals, actually. I like almost didn't get on the airplane, and then I just did it. And so I think that's why now I'm gonna like switch my focus, maybe do a figure show, and
That's
like
really cool.
just get everything back on track so I can see progress again and feel motivated. I don't know. I guess that makes sense, right?
Yeah, so I think like obviously you're kind of in that period now, and I think probably what you're doing is maybe just kind of shifting your focus a bit. I'm kind of going through a similar thing too, which I think sometimes it's tough when you are.
I feel way less athletic. Like when I was getting really strong, I could do like a lot of pull-ups, and I did that stuff, and I had energy to like do the more gymnastic stuff, and I just haven't been this year. And I remember getting back on the pull-up bar and only doing 4 pull-ups. wow, this is like, I don't feel like myself anymore. So I'm trying to incorporate the stuff I used to so I can just feel better and just get everything back on track. Because once you hit like a certain amount of laziness, it doesn't help you, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think if you're feeling burnt out or just not having fun anymore, I think there's nothing wrong with taking a little time off and just doing some more like kind of general training or just shifting your focus a bit, whether it's like weight loss or muscle gain or I just want to get better at, like you said, you want to get better at pull-ups or just being body weight training, calisthenics, and things like that. And I think like when you get away from it from a little bit, you actually just do start to miss it, and it kind of can help like revive
Yeah.
that fire again. Sometimes if you're always like on to the next meet prep, on to the next meet prep, on to the next meet prep, it could be tough, and you kind of just never kind of catch your breath. So I think that's good. Like I'm 12 years in competing and as well as coaching.
A long time.
So yeah, I always tell people like years 1, 2, and 3 is a lot different than 7, 8, 9, 10. So if you want to kind of do this for the long haul, you don't be in such a rush. And yeah, there's nothing like wrong with taking like 5, 6 months and like doing some other stuff and then getting back into and then jumping back in like later on. So I think that's good advice, and I think that sometimes with social media, sometimes we feel pressure to like kind of keep up with certain people and
see everyone doing well all the time, and you feel like everyone's stronger than you all the time, and you have to like catch up really fast. This is like my 4th year of training, kind of, and I think in the beginning, like you're getting stronger all the time, and it feels really good, and then like when you're in this like more advanced intermediate section, like it starts getting a lot harder.
Yeah.
Like. I know your 1 rep max is like always really heavy, but I think when you're like for a girl, let's say your 1 rep max is like 185, I still think that's different than trying to hit 300, 315. Like it's a lot more weight, and it just feels heavier.
Yeah, I know for me, like like my best squat in a belt is 705, and it's like if I can hit like a 5 pound PR, I'm like yes, it's like because you're kind of and because for me like I have to like peak myself just to be able to kind of maintain that strength, and it's like I can't walk in the gym and do that every day, but when you're newer, you can kind of like you said, you just kind of max out, and you're kind of like because you're still kind of figuring it out, you're still getting like those newbie gains and all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's really good to have that patience, and I think it's good to kind of hear it from someone because sometimes it's it's sometimes hard to see that the bigger picture when you're only a couple of months in or a year in or something like that, but when you're 4 or 5, 6 years in and so on, it definitely the game changes a little bit, and you definitely need to change your approach and have a little bit more patience, and don't be afraid to kind of like shift gears for a little bit, and you could always get back on track later. So I think that's really good advice. So going along with that, yeah, can you? I know we talked about you got some. You want to maybe do a figure or physique. I always get them mixed up, but you want to do
Figure's a little smaller. Physique is like the
more muscular or whatever. So yeah, so I know you want to do a different type of show and maybe get ready for that. Change your focus a bit. I know you want to put some muscle on. So tell us about that and maybe like how I know it's kind of newer, but like how your training focus has shifted. Maybe some of the differences in training and some of the different movements that you're trying out currently.
So when I competed 2 years ago and last year, the one thing I realized that every girl, like, got into prime time, kind of like at the end of it, and every girl I was competing against was like way more muscular than me, like much bigger. Even my mom, who was watching the live stream, was like, "Wow, Lizzy, you're really small. Those girls are a lot bigger than you." And like I started out doing starting strength, like just doing the big 3 lifts, and I think that I missed out on like doing bodybuilding for a year. Like a lot of girls were introduced through like bodybuilding. My quads are really small, like my shoulders are small, my arms are. I have like 10-inch biceps, which is really small. So I think that I'm like muscularly, I'm like not that developed compared to a lot of the girls that I'm competing against. So I think taking some time off, like working on more isolation movements, more body weight training, and just getting some more size and like balancing myself out will be a lot better. I think especially as a woman, when you just start with the big 3, you don't put on muscle like a guy does.
Right.
And you end up like, it's really hard for girls to bench press because you need to do a lot more accessory work. Because we just don't have like the muscularity that a dude does. We weren't doing push-ups in our bedroom when we were like 10, 12 years old, which I'm sure a lot of dudes do. So I think the bodybuilding will be good. It'll be fun too. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Excited.
Yeah, that is exciting. I think that's something I talk about a lot with some newer lifters because you see a lot of these programs out, and specificity is very important, especially as you get close to your competition. But if you're only doing the barbell lifts all the time, and let's say like your weak link is like your shoulders or your quads or whatever, and you aren't like doing some isolation work, you're gonna leave some. Eventually, you're gonna like leave some pounds on the table if those are your weak links and you don't have the hypertrophy. If you have a bigger muscle, it's more potential for a stronger muscle. So I think that after a couple of months of this, I could really see you kind of having that potential much higher, and your ceiling's going to be a lot higher. And I think it is always definitely cool. I know for me, the first time I coached at actually the Boss of Bosses meet, and I was in the back room, and a lot of the guys and girls like had their singlets on, their shirts off, and I thought it looked like everyone looked like an off-season bodybuilder, and you quite. And all these, you quickly realize, like, if you have like an all-time world record or like a USAPL American record or whatever it is, like, these people filled out their weight class and they have as much muscle as possible as they could fit on their frame for that weight class. And you don't really think about it, like, but it really like that's going to allow you to kind of excel and kind of reach your potential that much more. So I do think that's really good advice for people starting out. Don't be afraid to like, do some isolation movements. It's okay. Like I know there's a lot of information. Like, is it a waste of time and all this stuff? But the answer is always somewhere in between. So I think adding some bodybuilding training in, especially when you're far out from a meet, I think is a really, really great idea, especially if you are like really skinny or you don't have a lot of muscle for like your weight class. I think that's
like injury prevention and stuff like that. It's just smart. If you're imbalanced in some way and like one part of your body is taking the like most of the weight, it's just not gonna work. I don't have like my legs are really skinny. I squat mostly with just my back, and I think I've reached, like, I'm not going to squat more than 300 just squatting with my back. Like, I need to have, everyone who's a good squatter has huge quads, pretty much.
Yeah. That's a great point. We actually, I know you guys are a big fan of doing belt squats. We just got a belt squat machine, so we'll be hammering those because we got to get those legs nice and strong. Cool. So another question I wanted to ask you, too, this is more like personal question, but I know you post a lot of yoga stuff. I'm just curious, like, how you got into that. How do you incorporate, like, the yoga into, like, your weight training? A lot of times it's, like, very, like, polar opposite. Like, maybe, like, a yogi may never, like, lift, and, like, a power lifter may never, like, even, do, like, a toe touch or something. Or they never stretch at all. So I'm just curious how you got into that and how you kind of meld the two together.
I kind of always, like in college, I started going to yoga classes. And then when I moved to California, I got really into it. I did like a teacher training and like learning about all this alignment stuff. And like I had noticed imbalances in my body. Like one side of my body is more flexible. So it was really good for me to kind of just like take a step back and just work on aligning your own body instead of doing it with like 300 pounds on your back. And also, like, there's a lot of breath work that's really good. Like, if you don't know how to breathe, you're not going to be able to lift heavy weights.
Sure.
So stuff like that. And then I just realized it was really fun, and it was kind of fun to break the mold of, like, whenever, like, people in a yoga class, if you have muscle, they think you're, like, not going to be able to do it. So, and then I also, after I started strength training, I started noticing that I could do things that I never thought I would be able to do. Like the handstand stuff, all of that stuff, I never could do that. I never did gymnastics or anything. So just being able to control my body better and be stronger, it opened up this like whole nother world of stuff that I thought I would never be able to do in my life. And it's also another outlet to like see progress, and I think the more outlets you have, the less stuck you're going to get, like, mentally.
Yeah.
So if you can see yourself progressing, even if it's just in handstands or let's say you can do a cool new trick, like, that's fun. That's exciting, too. It's another way to make the gym exciting.
Yeah, and I think it was cool what you said about breaking the mold. Obviously, you have, like, a very unique look to you. You got, like, all different colors in your hair and tattoos and all this stuff. So I think that's really cool that one of the things I love about you is that you seem very authentic and you kind of not afraid to kind of be yourself, which I think is really cool and refreshing because I know sometimes on the internet people tend to like try to maybe like copy other people and stuff. So it's cool to like hear that from you. And I know for me, as a bigger guy, I've been trying to do like just more like stretching, and I wouldn't say I'm practicing yoga like per se like right now, but
just like more moving.
Yeah, just trying to be like more athletic, like you said, and just healthier. I always say, like, my buddy Zach Evanesh, he has a gym in New Jersey. He trains a lot of wrestlers, and we always talk about like you never want to be like strong and useless, not be able to tie your shoes and stuff like that. And it's great if you can like lift all this weight, but like you said, it's good to have a balance, good to have other goals. And I always found for me, using some of that time to stretch and kind of helps me wind down, helps me with my recovery.
For sure. Also, just taking the time to like sit down and just stretch, I think is mentally really good.
Yeah.
For you to do.
Yeah. So I think even if it's like maybe like are we getting our muscles longer and all this stuff, we can kind of argue all day, but doing activities that kind of help calm us down, I think is a really good idea because we're always like going crazy. Like let's like take the pre-workout and squat like 1,000,000 pounds and like let's grip it and rip it. So we're always like kind of like in that high stress like fight or flight environment. So if we can kind of also pull back and work on like the other side of things and kind of calm down, slow our breathing down, actually maybe like help us sleep and help us recover and help us like relax a bit. So to me, that's like kind of the avenue I'm trying to like learn more about because I know, especially being a business owner, you're very busy too. So it's really good to actually learn how to relax, which I think is a skill that a lot of us could use like more help in. We're probably really focused on the training. We hit that really hard, but also how do we help focus on recovery and just feeling better. And just like trying to like relax, sleep better, and just be ready for the next day and ready for the next workout. So.
Yeah, and that said too, I think when people like say, "Oh, I'm going to get into yoga," like they take like the hardest class they can. Some yoga classes are like intense.
Sure.
And I teach like hot yoga classes sometimes. They're hard, like it's a hard workout almost. When I think it would actually be much better to like take it slower. Beginner classes are really good because they're like much slower. It's mostly alignment and breathing, and you'll actually learn more and get a lot more out of it. But I do think we're always, especially seeing people on Instagram doing these crazy things, like you want to do the craziest thing all the time, the weirdest stretch or whatever, when like usually the simpler thing, just doing the simpler thing for 10 minutes every day, you'll get a lot more out of it.
Cool.
Than trying to imitate something crazy that you saw on Instagram.
I think that's really great advice, and I think it's also good just to like, if you are finding a yoga instructor in your area, just try to make sure they kind of understand where you're coming from and like what the goal is. So like you said, maybe like doing the advanced hot yoga class for a powerlifter, maybe it's not the best idea, but the beginner, more relaxation type like classes that are going to help you kind of learn the breathing, learn to kind of get in touch with yourself and relax and kind of practice those simple poses for recovery. And while respecting your body and your anatomy, I think is a really good idea, and it's definitely worth. That's something we're like looking to kind of add in our
like
gym. So
restorative classes where you're mostly propped up and you just get to like sit in these comfortable positions for like 10 minutes at a time. So even like looking for a restorative class on a Sunday night is probably your best bet, or like a basic beginner class.
Very cool.
Yeah.
One thing I always also like to ask, if someone came up to you and maybe they're on the fence of starting lifting, maybe they want to get into powerlifting, they're not really sure like where to start. Like what advice would you give that person?
I would tell them to. I think working with people in person is the best thing you can do.
Right.
I mean, there's so much stuff on the internet,
Totally.
but like there's so many different opinions and they're confusing. And if you're someone who's really never lifted, like learning how to do it correctly the first time is really important. And like finding a good support group, maybe trying to get to that gym that's like a little bit out of your way. Even if it is a half an hour, try to go there once a week if you can. It's important to be around people who are lifting well too. Even if you have like a coach, I think I do best when I have like a group of training buddies that all lift really well and have goals. And I think that's really motivating. And seeing people lift well, just seeing it, you're going to learn. So if you're just in 24-hour fitness all the time, seeing people lift poorly, that's not going to be good.
Right.
So going out of your way to find people who are passionate is important, even if it is a little out of your way, which I know a lot of people are like, it's, half an hour out of my way.
Yeah, we always talk about, actually, my friend Zach says this too, but you can pick convenience or excellence. And I think sometimes, so like when I started out, we didn't have powerlifting meets every weekend. We didn't have powerlifting gyms all everywhere. I would always have to drive out of state to compete. Now there's a week, we'd have to plan out our meets months in advance. If you miss a meet one weekend, there's a meet the next weekend now. So I
Yeah.
think that as much, it's great that the sport's grown, but I think sometimes we get a little spoiled. So I really love what you say. Like, don't be afraid to drive an extra half hour. Don't be afraid to drive an extra
Yeah.
20 minutes or even 45 minutes. We have people that come once a week from New Jersey, Staten Island, from all over. And because it's that important to be around those people that are good lifters, getting that coaching, getting that feedback on a
It
regular
doesn't have to
basis
be
is like
every
big. So
day either,
yeah,
but like once a week would make such a difference.
yeah. And I think so. I really, it's cool to hear you say that because I know like that you've been in it for a couple of years, but still like kind of relatively new, to compare to other people. So I think that's great because I think a lot of people, you know, once if you have a crazy schedule during the week, maybe like kind of do your own thing, but maybe once a week on the weekends or even a couple of times a month, maybe you drive out. You could check out powerliftingwatch.com. They have powerlifting friendly gyms in their area, so you can kind of see like what's close by to you. And you never know like who you might meet at one of these gyms and like the friendships and maybe it's a new training partner or just someone to lean on for support. Um,
Yeah.
that's like one of my favorite things about the powerlifting community is like those relationships and the support that you get from people. So I think that is really really good advice. So thank you so much for your time, Lizzy. I really appreciate it. Before we let you go, where can people find more about you and where can they follow you?
Well, I have my Instagram, Preza Forte, and that's just strawberry in Spanish. My hair used to be like pink and green, so it made more sense back then. And then it's also the same thing. I started a YouTube that I'm trying to get into too, so you can find me there as well.
Same handle or very cool. Maybe it can be like a blueberry instead of a.
That's true. Yeah.
Just it's a different berry, guys. So
Yeah.
if anyone gives you a problem, you just be like, I'm a blueberry now. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Always love catching up with you. Always enjoy watching you lift. Definitely give Lizzy a follow. If this interview helped you, please share it. You can check us out on iTunes. Please give us a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Stay strong. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye, guys.